official. She is making the run for the White House.
Today, I announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
The Hawaii Democrat joins an already crowded field that includes high-profile Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. In her speech, Gabbard talked about changing the values in the White House and referenced her time serving in the Army National Guard.
I will bring this soldier's principles to the White House, restoring the values of dignity, honor, and respect to the presidency, and above all else, love for our people and love for our country.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard joining me now from Honolulu. Aloha. You made it official last night, launching your 2020 bid in your home state of Hawaii. So why should the American people, make you the next president?
Well, Frederica, right now, Washington is essentially being controlled by self-serving politicians and greedy corporations who are putting their own interests ahead of the interests of the people. And this is creating hardship and suffering for the American people. Now, as a soldier, I know that at the heart of every one of our troops is the principles and values of service before self, of putting the interests of the country and the people before our own. And that's what I'll bring to the Oval Office. That's what I'll bring to the White House, is these soldiers' values of putting service before self and restoring the honor, dignity, and respect to the presidency that it deserves.
You said yesterday in your speech, I'm quoting you now, the road ahead will not be easy, the battles will be tough, the obstacles great. Among them, do you believe it will be a struggle to stand out in a growing field right now, particularly if you don't get widespread, congressional support from your colleagues?
Well, look, I'm focused on bringing my message to the American people. They're the ones who will decide who they would like to lead this country as president and as commander-in-chief. There's clearly so much at stake. The thing that I bring with my experience as a soldier is an understanding and knowledge firsthand of the cost of war and who pays the price. It is not only our veterans who pay the price, but every single American pays the price for regime change wars, for this new Cold War that we find ourselves in, and the nuclear arms race that will continue. These trillions of dollars that are being spent on these wars are dollars that need to be spent right here at home, addressing the very real, urgent needs of the people of this country: infrastructure, healthcare, education. You can go down the list. These are the things that we need to be addressing.
You mentioned the Cold War. Let's talk about the IMF treaty, the U.S. pulling out, Russia pulling out. What are your concerns about dismantling that treaty and the message that it is already sending, particularly European allies who are feeling rather vulnerable?
Well, it's very dangerous what the Trump administration has done in their decision to pull out from this treaty. It essentially is sparking a new nuclear arms race, exacerbating this new Cold War at the expense of the American people. Here in Hawaii, just over a year ago, we thought that we were under nuclear attack. There was a missile alert that went out, and there were mere minutes where people here in Hawaii were thinking that these were going to be the last minutes of our lives. We had a father who was lowering his little girl down a manhole cover into a storm drain because he thought that would be the only place that she could be safe. Others were running frantically trying to find shelter. A friend of mine drove his family to the mountains to try to find a cave. This is a real threat that exists not just for the people of Hawaii, but for the people of this country. We are at a greater risk of a nuclear catastrophe today than ever before in history. As commander-in-chief and as president, this is something that I will address. I will end this new Cold War to make it so that the trillions of dollars that people currently in power want to spend towards overhauling our nuclear weapon system, investing in buying more nuclear weapons, those are dollars that need to be spent in serving the needs of our people here at home.
So if elected, would you resurrect something tantamount to the IMF treaty?
Yes, absolutely. This is a situation that we need to address so that we're not proliferating more of these nuclear weapons around the world, where currently we have nearly 15,000 nuclear weapons in the world, enough to destroy us many times over. Right now, President Trump is moving this country in the wrong direction, and we need to come back from that and work towards a future where we are not living under this nuclear threat, where in mere minutes our future could be gone.
So I want to turn now to Virginia Governor Ralph Northam. He's come under fire for that racist photograph that appeared in his medical school yearbook page in the 1980s. He has been urged to resign by prominent Democrats. He says now that's not even him in the photograph, and that he will not resign. What do you think he should do?
I know this is ultimately an issue that he needs to resolve with his own constituents. That's really the bottom line. He's got to have their trust, and if he doesn't, then he should resign. I think it's important for us to focus on what I'm focused on is the challenges that we face. Again, bringing down and ending the regime change war policies that have cost our country so much, both in American taxpayer dollars and in lives, ending this Cold War and the nuclear arms race so that we can take our limited resources and make sure that those dollars coming out of the pockets of every single American are actually going towards addressing the needs that they have in their lives.
Can the Virginia governor lead when, those in the political sphere in Virginia and beyond are asking him to resign? I mean, you mentioned, what the Virginian people would say, but, their elected leaders are speaking on their behalf and they are asking him to resign. Can he govern by maintaining his position even though there are voices that are telling him to step down?
Yeah, I think he's in a very difficult situation of his own creation. And again, that's something that he's got to work out with his constituents and the people of Virginia.
So you have come under fire, for statements that you've made in the past. CNN's K-File reported, on your work, for your father, an anti-gay activist in Hawaii, and in 2004 you testified at a hearing opposing, civil unions bill, saying, to try to act as if there is a difference between civil unions and same-sex marriage is dishonest, cowardly, and extremely disrespectful, to the people of Hawaii. You went on to say, as Democrats, and I'm quoting now, we should be representing the views of the people, not a small number of homosexual extremists. You did since apologize, but do you feel like you've made amends and that the American people will look past that?
Those were statements that were made a long time ago. I regret making those statements and the hurt and pain that came about because of them. And I've apologized many years ago and have apologized since and have worked throughout the 6 years that I've been in Congress to fulfill the commitment that I made to our LGBTQ community here in Hawaii, as well as across the country, to stand up for them and to fight for them. My record speaks for itself, and I will continue to stand for equality for all people.
Let me ask you about the president's plan on pulling out troops in Syria. The Pentagon, according to our reporting, has already made preparations for at least putting 3,000 people on the U.S. Southern border. And then, of course, the president has talked about pulling troops out of Syria and even Afghanistan. Where are you on this president's use of U.S. troops in these capacities?
Yeah, you've mentioned a bunch of different examples. Look, it makes me angry when I see our troops being used as political pawns. It makes me angry to see our troops essentially being used as mercenaries for hire to go and fight in regime change wars in other parts of the world. Our troops sacrifice so much. Their families sacrifice so much. They must be honored by only being sent on missions that are worthy of their sacrifice and that truly serve the interests of the American people and our country. This is why we need to bring our troops home from Syria. We need to bring our troops home from Afghanistan. And we need to end these regime change war policies that are so costly in ways that I've just discussed.
Do you worry about
human lives and American taxpayer dollars?
Those countries being left particularly vulnerable with the U.S. troop pullout?
we have a small number of troops in these countries, and ultimately their presence there is not going to make them more or less vulnerable. Our troops need to be concerned about keeping the American people safe, making sure that our country is secure. And this president's policies, and frankly the policies that have spanned through different administrations and through both political parties of continuing regime change wars, not only make us less safe, not only make the American people less safe because they strengthen and increase the numbers of terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but they also undermine our ability to achieve peace, for example, in a place like North Korea, where the leader of North Korea is maintaining nuclear weapons and has built these nuclear weapons as a deterrent against the regime change war policies that we've seen throughout our country's history for a very long time. We cannot begin to think that the negotiations to denuclearize the North Korean peninsula will have any fruit so long as our president, this administration, continues to wage regime change wars and threaten regime change wars as he is doing currently in places like Venezuela and in Iran.
Okay. Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, mahalo.
Aloha. Thank you.